Start the recording.
All right. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Elizabeth and Jeff Vaudrey, the owners of Tipple's Brews and Wines in Gainesville, Florida. Thanks for joining us for sampling our wine of the week. I'll run down some information about it, but most importantly, we'll drink it and enjoy it. That's exactly. The most important part of any wine experience, in my opinion. So this week, we will be enjoying the Brash Higgins Shiraz, the Shiraz, SHZ, by the Omen Center. It's from the Omen Center Vineyard. It's a single vineyard Shiraz. Before we crack into, let's take a look at what we think about for food pairings and do the overview slide.
Okay.
Thank you. So here we have the Brash Higgins Omen Center Shiraz. The Omen Center part is referencing the vineyard it's coming from.
Okay.
Wine enthusiast rating 92. This is not unusual for these guys at all. Food pairings for this guy: grilled vegetables, ox cheek stew, sharp cheddar, and kanga. So kangaroo, true story, listed as one of the pairings. By the way, the kangaroo best served as medium rare steaks.
Oh, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I could see that.
There you go. So let's go ahead and jump back to us, please.
Okay.
So now is that time, if you have not already done so, to pour yourselves a glass. When you crack this guy open, you'll see that it is a Stelvin enclosure. That is the fancy term that, for a screw cap wine. Australians love screw cap wines.
Why?
Because corks add an element of potential for infection to the wine.
Okay.
So a Stelvin enclosure leaves almost no ability to have the wine tainted.
Sure.
And it just, because some of them, I mean, traditionally corks can destroy up to 10% of your wine after you've made it.
Wow.
So you go through the entire process. And if you're using natural cork, you can lose 10% in the market.
That's a lot.
Plus, most of that is not discovered until it's at the customer, right?
So you've already shipped it. You've already gone through all of
You've gone through you've gone through importing, distribution, retail to the customer. Now somebody's unhappy and had a bad experience with your brand.
Right.
So that 10% really echoes as a problem. So
it would still be a problem if you caught it before it went out. But if you're catching it once it gets to the customer, it's so much worse. It's exponentially worse.
Exactly.
It's more of an effect than just a 10% effect.
Right. So that is one of the things that I've been working to educate people on, is that a Stelvin enclosure does not mean cheap wine.
Does it mean unageable wine?
It doesn't, interestingly. Okay. They originally thought yes. All right. So the original thought was, well, if you put it in a Stelvin enclosure, you can't age it. That is not true. You can age it. And they've done a lot of research and they go back and forth on there. But really, the preponderance of new research is showing you can age wine in a Stelvin enclosure.
Is there a limit to how long you can age it in a Stelvin? Like, or is it, 5 to 10, but not 30? The
difference is not so much how long you can do it. It's that it doesn't change as much. Because a cork allows oxygen in more than a Stelvin enclosure will.
Right.
So with a Stelvin enclosure, the benefit is you're not going to get an infection. The drawback, if you will, would be on something you may age. It will only age with what is in the bottle.
That makes sense.
So it's a smaller change with age.
Well, when I asked the question, I thought you were going to answer the opposite of what you answered. I thought you were going to say, yep, means you have to drink it within 3 years.
And it can, right? Okay. So some Stelvin enclosures, it's because they're like, hey, this is meant to be consumed right away, right? So there is a whole group out there. The majority of Stelvin enclosure wines are meant to be consumed young.
Okay.
It's not meant for, it's not meant for aging. And so drink it. And that can also be said for this, but this also can age.
Okay.
It's made for that. But really, what they are usually signaling to you is go ahead and drink it.
Okay.
But it does not signal.
But it doesn't preclude from
doesn't
aging.
preclude you from hanging out, keeping it for a little bit. And it also does not indicate a quality level necessarily. Right. So let's see here. So I covered the foods, 100% Shiraz on this guy as we take a sniff and a sip. That's going to be fun to talk about.
Mhm.
Alcohol content, 14.2%. Certified organic. And you're going to find some interesting aspects in this. This guy is fermented in clay pots called amphora.
Okay.
All right. And then aged in French oak for about 20 months.
Linda said she's getting pepper.
That's because there's a lot of pepper in it. She's totally right.
Yep. Good call.
I see a nice acidity on this guy. It's a brightness. And actually I will go into this because we are doing, it's not a back-to-back Shiraz tasting, but we did do Shiraz 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of us that were here, you will kind of have some of those notes in your mind about what it was like. This is a very different expression of Shiraz.
Oh, definitely.
Right? It's a very different one. So age potential on this guy, you can go a good 10 years. It's just not going to change as much. It's just
So we're about halfway in that then, because it's
Right.
2017. So.
there you go. Really small production on this guy, which we'll talk more about as we get into the producer. But I always like to start kind of, I start small, then expand really big to the area, and then go back in.
Okay.
Small being exactly this wine, right? So, really dark fruits, really spicy and peppery on the nose. A high level of acid on here. This is very much something that makes me want food with the wine. It's making my mouth water.
Sure. I agree with that.
Right.
But this is just, I love it so much that this is my wine. So I don't need food.
Okay.
Just drink it.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. But it's a luscious tart.
It is.
Like a luscious tart plum, almost a raspberry to go with the tart cherry, right?
Well, I was going to say, but for me, like if we talk about a beer genre, for me, the sours and the tartar it is, I love it. So better it is for me. So this, I love those tart notes.
Now we did just crack this, and hopefully some of you guys had it open a little longer. That tartness is going to mellow. Okay. Right. As we drink this, that oxygen playing with this, that tartness is going to open up and mellow and express more peppercorn, which I see.
Okay, right.
Green peppercorns, mushroom. I would go more of like a coffee, like a coffee baker's chocolate kind of thing. And it's barely beginning to express that for us because ours just cracked open, right?
So Jeff, I'm gonna speak up this time for once. It tastes like olive to me, like green olive.
Yes. A nice, a black olive. Fantastic call. I love it. Yep. And I like that because there's a savory note to this. And that's one of the things I find exciting. Like on the nose, even, especially early on, I got almost a meaty quality, like a peppered bacon, a peppered pork, which is like Northern Rhone. Northern Rhone grows Syrah. Syrah and Shiraz are the same grape.
Right.
So this guy is this interesting growth where it's Australian, but a lot of what it's expressing is similar to the Northern Rhone.
Okay.
All right. So
that olivey meaty taste is the mushroomy taste too that you're talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So and to me, like as I was talking, I really got that kind of that olive was hanging out on my palate. Sure. As I'm talking, and it finishes up. So that is, and I think it really does go to a nice olive flavor, which is
like an earthier.
It is. Flavor. And it's from, this is a mineral driven wine from where it's grown. And it's also going to be mineral driven because it's aged in clay. Okay. Right. Fermented in clay, aged in oak. Right. So I didn't want to misspeak.
So, and then the Snyder said they had a huge change from their first sip to their second sip.
Oh yeah.
So how did it change for you? We can't hear you.
Hard to describe. This is weird. Like at first we really got the kind of tartness and the peppery and the green pepper and the peppercorn. And now we're getting the fruit,
Oh my
but it's like two different sips, but opposite for David.
Okay, so we missed part of that.
Mhm.
Can you try it again? And if it doesn't work, will you put it in the chat? Because it like
Yeah.
cut out.
So for me, it was peppercorn and green pepper, and then
Okay.
now fruit. And for David,
It got better last week.
Yeah. They're going to type, Rachel's going to type it for us.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm
But-
sure the rest of you are hearing it. We're having an issue for some reason.
Right. But this is a zingy wine when you have the acid playing with that pepper. That's why I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be so good with food, right? Because it's going to really add to it. So, it's giving a lot of mineral content on there. This is not a fruit bomb, and there's a lot of Shiraz that is a fruit bomb out there, and this guy's not it. It's a very different expression, which is why I wanted to have it as kind of a counterpoint to the other, which was not a fruit bomb either. That one was a little more Bordeaux-like,
Okay.
but that one went more to the earth and still didn't have as much acid as this, even though that one had acid as well. We'll talk about why that is. That has to do with where it's grown.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, and then, so
Pepper to
evidently
fruit.
for the Snyders, well, only for Rachel, it went from pepper to fruit. And then for David, it went from tart to terroir. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And then Sherry said the eating the chocolate didn't enhance it for them.
Okay.
Yeah, but they tried. So yes, you do. You get a gold star for trying the
That's
chocolate
right.
with it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There was nothing wrong with throwing chocolate in there. This guy's got so much acid, it probably isn't going to
Play well.
play as well with chocolate as normal.
Okay.
Like
okay.
the Penfolds
Mhm.
would have played easier with the chocolate.
Okay.
There is a bit of baker's chocolate in here, but it's going to take a moment.
Okay.
And the tannins are just starting to wake up for me. At first, it was pretty smooth, and it's starting to get a little more prickle across the tongue as it's getting some oxygen.
I'm not getting a lot of.
But you got to really
tannins.
chew it, really chew the
Okay.
wine. Remember, we talked about that, where you take a sip and really roll it around your tongue several times.
Okay. Mildly getting tannins when I'm doing that, but
Yeah.
I wasn't getting any at first.
Sure.
So. mhm.
Okay, fair enough. But I feel like also there's a bit more of that chocolate coming out on the nose now than there was.
Yeah. I mean, I had it with sharp cheese and it worked really well with that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Mhm. As I was saying, oh, I just love it without food. And then I realized I actually did eat food.
So one of the things, so what helps with aging, right?
Mhm.
Alcohol level, we're at 14%, check.
Yeah.
Higher acid,
Mhm.
definitely check. We've got a lot of tartness on this fruit.
Right.
And then tannins, right? So you say tannins,
Yeah.
tannins, okay. It's not going to be a negative, but it's not going to be a push, right?
Mhm.
But you've got 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
So yes, that's one of the other reasons this guy can age.
Okay.
Mhm. Smoke good in London broil, that would be a fantastic pairing. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, very
absolutely.
good. Because really that cheese to really work with that acid to kind of work together and mellow out the acid,
Mhm.
but then lift up the cheese.
Yeah.
And that's a great pairing.
How's it going to work with our Italian sausage?
So we have
flavor?
some spicy Italian sausage soup
Yeah.
going up.
Yeah.
It'll play really well with the spices.
Okay.
And then I add cheese to mine.
Right.
So it's going to play well with that. So
I'll just eat cheese on the side.
there you go.
Yeah. It'll work.
All right, let's go jump back over to the,
To the share?
Yep.
All right. Next.
yes. All right, so wine label review, right? So we'll get to the what I wrote on there because it's on the back. So we have on here, if you're blindly grabbing this bottle, if you're not getting help, which would never happen at Tipple's, right? So you get here and say, all right, I wanted to buy a Shiraz. This guy is more expensive than many of the Shirazes, right? So what's it telling me? So it says the varietal, it is a Shiraz, 2017. It's got some time in there. That's
Mhm.
nice to hear. Omen Center Vineyard. So it's a single vineyard production. People don't put that on lightly.
Okay.
All right. If you're getting a single vineyard, they're taking pride in that selection. McLaren Vale. So
The
single
region?
vineyard from a specific smaller region.
Okay.
Brash Higgins. There's the winemaker. They give a nice write up here about the history of the winemaker. Who's from Chicago and he became a sommelier. wandered the world, was really inspired by a lot of great wines, including Sicilian wines. And we'll go into a bit more about what he, did and his business partner, which was incredibly important. The Oman Center Vineyard, single vineyard, planted in 1997. That was actually planted by his partner.
Okay.
And yeah, so anyway.
And so we'll get into that.
Right.
You're doing teasers.
I'm doing teasers, right. McLaren Vale, it gives you that again. So this is produced by them. It is estate. And so they have complete control over the winemaking and the growth. 300 barrels. So that's where I brought that up. And I was like, okay, what does 300 barrels mean? I thought that would be good to kind of spell it out, because it is small, but you end up at 3,500 bottles for the worldwide production for this.
Well, because when I'm seeing almost 18,000 gallons, I'm like, that's so much. But then we, 3,500 bottles for the entire world.
For the world,
I wonder how many of those bottles make it to the United States. I mean,
yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, because I'm sure like most of it probably stays domestic for them.
Right.
So,
Jeff, one quick question.
Yeah.
How do you get 17,000 gallons?
I'm sorry, our audio really isn't working well. I don't know why. Okay. We're gonna have to use the chat box tonight, unfortunately.
Yeah, it kind of fixed itself last week.
Yeah, last week it started off like this and then warmed up. So keep trying.
Right. But please feel free to type in the chat box to keep us rolling. I still think there's a nice smoky quality on the nose on this guy. It's almost like a smoked chocolate. Right.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and advance, but then we will absolutely pick up and answer any questions that come across the chat.
Right. All right. I really liked these, and they still apply.
So you put them again.
Because we were just there. I know. Come on. Who doesn't want to see a kangaroo drinking?
So Rachel made a good point. If you were, and I'm not sure if it was Rachel or David because I didn't see who was typing, but if you were an artist with 3,500 prints, you would sign and number them. Absolutely.
Oh,
so
there you go.
that shows you it is small production.
It is. And honestly, this is, I think, the largest production that these guys put out.
Oh, wow.
Everything else is much smaller. They put out a Zabibo wine. That's the grape, Zabibo. And it's done in their style, which we'll talk about. Much, much smaller production. One of the coolest white wines you'll ever drink. Okay. And I know I said white wine, but it is truly wonderful.
Okay. Is there a way to speed up how quickly the tartness will mellow out?
If you were to decant it, or put it through an aerator, it'll accelerate that.
Okay.
But the big thing is, put it in your glass and keep spinning it. That is.
What if you stuck a straw and blue bubbles in it?
Yeah, you could, but honestly, spinning it. I'm
just wondering if you don't have an aerator, could you do like a very
If you did it into the bottle while you were waiting?
I was thinking in your glass, but
in your glass, just spin it.
Okay.
Just spin it continuously. It'll keep working that oxygen in.
Okay.
Because it's going to evolve. It's going to peak up and then it's going to change and relax.
So what do we expect as it relaxes? What are we going to taste?
More of the coffee and chocolate.
Okay.
And more of a more mellow fruit. All right. So the fruit's going to ripen a little bit.
Okay.
Get a little more richness out of it. Right now, you've got a lot of sharp acid on this guy.
Right. Because I could see, like, as I've said, personally, I really like tart.
Right.
But I know a lot of people don't.
Right. Well, right now, this guy's drinking almost like a Syrah version of a Rioja. Spanish Rioja, right? Tempranillo. Theirs are made with high acid in order to pair with food. And that is the thing. So if you were eating a filet mignon with this, you would love that acid, because as you sipped it with the filet, it would be amazing. In fact, this has enough. It could go with a fattier cut of meat as well. So you can go with New York strip. You could do, prime. You could do those things, and they would all work because of the acid in here to clean your palate and play with those proteins.
Sure.
So this is very much in that Italian kind of concept of being a food wine. And that is, we talk about food pairings, but I also want to make it clear, like when we're talking, it's like, I get that some wines if they're done in a more old world style,
Mhm.
they really do make them like, okay, this is to be paired with something in your mouth, and then it explodes food in your mouth. And a lot of American New World wines are made to where it's like, it doesn't matter if you're
You
eating
just
or
grab
not.
the bottle and
Mm.
drink it on your back porch.
Right, exactly. Which neither one is better or worse. They're
Mhm.
just different choices.
Yeah. I was wondering about that too. 17,000 gallons, but 3,500 bottles, because a bottle's clearly less than a gallon.
Right. So it was, I was just doing quick math on Google when
So
I did it.
it's
So
fewer bottles than gallons,
no, you know what? It might be 35,000.
which would be significantly more and wouldn't feel like small production to me.
Well, it's still pretty small production. But let me
Okay.
see, let me see here.
Okay.
All right. So, oh, anyway, you know what? I'm going to do the presentation. We're going. I probably did a math error on there. That was the last thing I did. And I went back. I was like, I'm going to add this additional detail. It was the last thing I did. And clearly I made a mistake.
And did not send it to his math teacher
No,
wife.
I didn't.
Nope.
So I was doing the conversion. I can't remember how many barrels. It's 300 barrels. It's like 59 gallons a barrel. So it's 300 times 59.
We're
And
not
then you
gonna
divide
do
it
the
out by
math
the
right now,
ounces.
yeah.
And anyway, so you see where I was going back and forth
Right,
on that.
right.
Clearly I messed up. You know what? It's 300 barrels. Let's leave it there. We know that part's accurate. There's only 300 barrels to the world. It doesn't sound like much.
It doesn't when you say
It really isn't.
Okay.
Okay, so drunk kangaroos, that is the subject of the moment.
Okay.
We like, anyway, by the way, all right, so go ahead, go to the next one. There we go.
Jeff's gonna throw these in.
Julie
anytime
didn't
we
get to
go
see this.
Australia.
Julie didn't get to see this. They missed that tasting. So, all right, so here we go. I like that one. All right, so Shiraz is Syrah, right? So Syrah, origin, southeastern France. It is the offspring of two obscure grapes, the Doreza and the Mondeuse Blanche, the white grape. So this pairing created a more intense red grape, which is what happened with Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon. Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
To create Cabernet Sauvignon,
Yeah.
right? So that was a red and a white that created a more intense red than the parent red.
Mhm.
And the same thing happened here.
Yeah.
So gotta love those intense wine pairings because they create some of the best grapes in the world. So it's a very flexible grape. It can be grown in temperate, cooler climates, which gives you a little bit of that kind of a meaty, peppery quality.
Okay.
Or
Which
really,
we have here for sure.
there you go. Or really warm climates, which gives you big fruit and big, kind of like a baking spice thing and high alcohol. So they really do have flexible growing regions, but they do express themselves differently. I would say this guy is for Australia, expressing much more in a French style.
Which is to me like that earthiness, that mushroomy, olivey quality.
Right.
That's what I would say is the French, like what I'm tasting.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they get
cool.
like a
I was
smoky-
right. I get a gold star
No, you're
too.
right. The French style from the Northern Rhone is cooler, and you get this olive kind of pepper pork smoky quality to it,
So, and I
and
feel
high
like
acid tartness.
I don't have a lot left in my glass, but I feel like the color is kind of spot on for what we're seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
So as much tartness as we're getting here, we're getting very intense color out of this grape, which is normal, though it can have less color as well. I mean, some of the Northern Rhone, you would be able to see through.
Oh, okay.
Not quite like a Pinot
Okay.
Noir, but more like an Italian wine. But so this guy, you can't see through it. So you see that there is some intensity in here. So Australia sits in the middle, or this Australian sits in the middle.
Okay.
But most Australian Shiraz is much more to the extreme of ripeness, big fruit and that kind of a thing,
So
and higher alcohol.
it would be Not as tart.
not as tart.
Okay.
Very much. That would be the biggest difference you would see is not as tart.
Okay. Wait, so I have a question then.
Okay,
It's 92 points. It's definitely expressing what it's supposed to express.
right.
But if that's not typically what it expresses, then how are they rating that?
Because you have the Northern Rhone to look at,
Okay.
right? So
right.
it's expressing more like the most prestigious Syrah growing region in the
Okay.
world. And so
they're-
that's why they elevate it in their
They're
assessment.
looking at it as it's grape, not as this is what this region normally
Right.
expresses as a Shiraz. Instead, I'm evaluating it as a Syrah. Really.
Yes, really,
Okay.
the reality is that
Okay.
they're really comparing it and elevating it to the level of French Syrah from Australia.
Okay.
Good
All
question.
right. Thank you. Should I advance?
Yes, please. All right, so Syrah flavors: blueberry, black plum, milk chocolate, tobacco. I think if we threw tobacco in here and really take a sniff, you'd get there. Green peppercorn, we talked about it. So dryness, dry, absolutely. Full bodied, yes, a big heavy mouthful of wine. Medium high tannin. This guy I would give a medium,
Yeah.
right?
I would say
So a
not
little
medium
lower,
high. Medium to medium
Me-
low is what I'm getting.
right? And then and then
Mhm.
medium acidity, I'd say medium plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Mhm.
guy's a little more tart.
Mhm.
But don't forget, a lot of these guys, instead of this, they're working on this very minimal intervention. They're clay pots. It's going to be a different expression.
Sure.
Right.
Plus it's organic and it's certified organic.
It is.
So they've jumped through additional hoops for that.
Right. But we're still in the upper range on this guy, 14.2, on the alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So next slide, please.
I was just looking at that. It's more like dead center,
Mm.
not upper range of this grape.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right. So here we go. Shiraz, specifically as, a subset of Syrah. Deep ruby color. So we got that guy, right?
Mhm.
So blackberry, black cherry, pipe tobacco, camphor, and clove. So camphor would be that, kind of something.
I'm not getting a lot of.
I'm not getting a lot of that, which
camphor on
I
this one.
like.
Mhm.
Honestly, I find that a bit distracting when you get that kind of eucalyptus-y
Yeah.
kind of thing on there. Clove, I could see.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That's in that baking spice. We threw that out earlier.
Definitely getting
Mm-hmm.
blackberry and black cherry. But like you said, some raspberry too, I think.
Yes, it's very red, but I will say this is starting to loosen up a little bit.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Advance.
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. So
Where
the
did it come
origin,
from?
it's southeastern France. So this is when I said Northern Rhone, it drinks like a Northern
Mhm.
Rhone wine. This is the Northern Rhone right here, this little section. Now it's grown extensively through the Southern Rhone as well.
It's just cooler growth up north.
Cooler growth, different expression. Down here, not nearly as tart, right? But you do always get a really nice combination of pepper and baking spice. It's a
Mhm.
spicy grape,
Yeah.
almost no matter where it is.
Okay.
Usually tobacco comes along, but you don't get that smoky, meaty flavor except up in here
Okay.
for the most part. But this is the origin, was right around in this area, southeastern France. Grape anatomy has a very intense skin, but obviously can be well balanced with in the intermediate zone, retaining a lot of acidity.
Mhm.
So it's not all about the outside edge on this guy. It's a little bit more distributed, depending on where it is. Now, with areas that are warmer growth, that intermediate zone plays very minimal role.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's all
more
about the
skin.
outside.
Yeah. Okay.
Even darker, much more fruit, which is a different experience, but still fun in its own
Mhm.
way. Mhm. And bigger tannin,
Okay.
right? So where is this grown? We are down here in Southern Australia, right in this Bay area. So in the upper third of the
Yeah.
growing region down there. Of course, things are changing. Right now, Tasmania is all Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but we'll see what it's doing in 20 years. So Wine growing regions. South Australia is where we are once again. And let's go in. This week, we are in the McLaren Vale. So you see it's right along the coast. So this has a maritime influence of the sea breezes cooling off the vineyards.
Mhm.
Now, when we drank the Penfolds 2 weeks ago, it was from the Barossa Valley,
Mhm.
right? So in this one, it gets intense heat during the day, but it cools off from the sea breezes very quickly at night
Okay.
to help prolong the ripening period to give it better character, right? In the Barossa Valley, they have the same effect, but not from sea breezes. They barely get the sea breezes, but that's going into mountains.
Okay.
So in the
So are they
Barossa
getting, like,
Valley,
fog or something?
it basically the cool
Mhm.
air at the top of the
Mhm.
mountain rushes down as soon as the sun's
Okay.
heat is off,
Okay.
because that cool air is heavier, so it rushes down. So they get the same effect, but for different reasons. Because we did have some acidity left, though less acidity than this week. So I would say of the two, the coolness of the Gulf there
Mhm.
is the stronger of the two influences,
Okay.
right? So let's see here.
Because you have more acidity? with the-
We have more acidity this week. Yeah.
Well, no, I know we have more acidity, but
Right.
the coolness is what's causing the more.
The
acidity.
coolness will do
Okay.
that. Right.
Okay.
And now to the other extent, though, the Barossa Valley, the Penfolds wine
Mhm.
had a lot more oak and a lot younger oak on there.
Okay.
And this guy with that amphora, the clay to
Mhm.
bring out minerality and
Mhm.
keep it fresh was that's a winemaker's choice.
Okay.
And that is a big part of what we're tasting.
So
is the
yeah, it's
winemakers.
not just the grape, it's what's influenced it after it was harvested.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let's see here. Long dry growing season in the McLaren Vale that allows for long hang time, gaining of character on the grape, because they don't have to worry about a late season rain diluting the quality of the juice, right? It's so dry, they have to irrigate,
Oh, okay.
which actually plays into the origin of this wine, which we'll go into as well. And so cool, wet winters. So the cool, wet winters allow the grapevines to recover from all the exertion they put into grape making during the summer, which of course for them is the opposite time of year. So right
it's
now
not-
it's harvest season down there.
Okay.
And for us, it's budding season.
Okay.
Mhm. Rolling hills. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Rolling hills, red clay, sandy soil, basically clay soil playing together. So they've got high minerality, fast draining soil. The roots have to run deep in order to continue to get moisture, but they don't keep a lot of moisture at the top, which would rot out the vine. And not a lot of humidity, because humidity will get in between the grapes, and that continued moisture would create mildews and all kinds of fungi that would destroy the grapes. So low humidity during the growing season, but lots of intense sun. So we already talked about the difference between the two. So let's move on to the winery. We can, look at a little more. I had to include this, but you'll know why.
Mhm.
This picture, A, beautiful.
Right.
B, needed to be in there because the source. I love the name of this source so much.
Okay. So when we get to our sources, it's
Yes.
just so you can say the name.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
Okay.
All right, so
Advance.
advance, please. All right, Brash Higgins Winery, the Almond Center Vineyard. Brash Higgins Winery is a collaboration between winemaker Brad Hickey and the co-owner Nicole Thorpe. All right, they met in 2007 and began working together then. Brad is the winemaker, and his winemaking persona is Brash Higgins,
Okay.
because he's very brash in what he does. He sets a very different. He's working with all kinds of Sicilian grapes down
Mhm.
there, and he's doing some crazy things.
Okay.
I mean, like the Zabibo wine. Who works with Zabibo, right? But he does. So the brashness, it's his.
I don't think
it's
I've
his-
heard Zabibo before this week.
Right.
So
He's kind of like his superhero persona for winemaking,
okay.
right? He's from Chicago, and he's a sommelier, traveled around the world, really was influenced by a ton of different winemakers, particularly Sicily. And he and Nicole met. Now, Nicole comes from a family origin that their connection to the wine industry was mostly through irrigation systems. When I told you it had to be irrigated, and that was important.
Right.
But she did buy her own plot of land in 1997 and plant in the Omen Center vineyard. So the Omen Center is hers, but it is the core of their brand and what they pull from.
Okay.
They do get grapes from certain other areas, but this is the core of what they grow, and they control it. So together, they made Brash Higgins.
Are they together, or
They are together.
Well, okay. I didn't know if they were just like business
It
partners.
didn't make it 100% clear.
Okay.
And so I
Okay.
thought I'm going to respect that. You know
Yeah.
what? Yeah. So
All right.
there we go. Nicole, so she planted in 97. They do minimal intervention winemaking. So,
So have they always been organic then?
always been organic,
Okay.
and they pick them, they crush them, they stick them into open vat clay vessels and let
Oh.
it naturally ferment.
Yeah, I think we saw about a year ago, you had some pictures of like open vats. Oh,
I'll
we have some
more.
more? Okay,
Yes, we
cool.
go. Let's go to the next one.
All right.
Well, there they are.
They look like they're together, but
Once again,
Maybe
wasn't
not.
explicitly stated, so
Sure.
I'm not going to,
Okay.
yeah. They might just be great, awesome
Friends.
partners. So,
there you go.
yeah. And so here they
There are
are.
the
So
open vats.
those are the open
So
vat
those are the
amphoras.
clay
Yep.
amphoras,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Those are the big clay pots. And you can
Mhm.
see they've got them in there. They crushed them. They're bubbling up because there's a
Right,
lot of
right.
activity in there. It's a very raw process that we're drinking. So a lot of people are into natural wines, very
Mhm.
minimally affected wines. That is one of the things that we're drinking tonight.
Okay. So it's interesting. You see the amphoras, and in the background, you see the barrels.
Right. Oh yeah. And you can see that
Mhm.
we're aging in the French barrels.
Mhm.
So let's see here. Like I said, about 52 gallons in each one of those pots. And then their big thing is they want to grow amazing grapes and really express what is happening in that vineyard.
Okay.
So that's
They
their,
don't want to affect it a lot with like putting it in American New Oak or
Right.
yeah.
they want to do their best to make a beautiful wine.
Mhm.
And I would say this is more of, a lot of Shiraz is about power, right?
Mhm.
It's a powerhouse.
Mhm.
I say this one is big, but pretty.
Yeah.
It's a more feminine expression
Yeah, it's
of
not
Shiraz.
attacking. So let me ask you, the amphoras, are they always just fermentation vessels, or does anybody age in them?
Some people age in them.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
I've had some.
Are they always open like that? then?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm,
All right.
they're not always. And by the way, they had no amphora, like there's no amphora guy, right? Especially in Australia.
Mhm.
So they had to create all that. That's a whole thing. There were these really cool videos, but they were on YouTube,
Mhm.
but they weren't from YouTube. They were done in it looked like TikTok or something,
Okay.
and it wouldn't transfer over.
Oh, okay.
So
All right. So you didn't include those.
I could not, but anyway, but I thought that's a great picture, and that's
Yeah.
right off their website. So
Ready?
yes. Anyway, but actually that moves us on.
Okay.
So what do we have here? We have a very intriguing, different style, and I knew it would be a different style. That
Mhm.
was one of the reasons I was excited to share it with
Because
everybody.
we had the Shiraz
We
2
had
weeks ago.
right. We had the
Yeah.
Shiraz 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
I often don't circle back that quickly.
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to bring this guy in as a significantly reduced rate versus normal. I was able to give it a bigger discount
Mhm.
to make it, because I always try to hit a certain price target point roughly with what we drink. And I wanted everyone I knew it was going to be very different from what we drank with the Penfolds.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but that's part of what we do with this, though. I think this is a great opportunity to, especially I think over the past 2 years, just the education. So it's not always going to be my favorite
Right.
or your favorite.
Right, but that's the thing.
But it's an education in as you move around the world or move through different styles or whatever. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. This is an excellently artisanally produced wine.
But
It is what
may
they
not be your
intended.
thing.
It may you may be thinking, not my favorite Shiraz. You may be thinking my favorite Shiraz, which is the point,
Right.
because this guy is going to elicit strong feelings,
Mhm.
and it is a very different Shiraz than most expressions. But I wanted to point that out, that it can be done, and this winemaker's choice really shows up in the glass.
Yeah.
Like,
So for
he's
me,
brash. I mean, he makes a statement.
I'm used to, and I guess I expected more aggressive tannins from it. That would be,
Right.
yeah.
Mhm.
So because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrongly remembering, but I feel like Shirazes normally have more aggressive tannins.
Yes,
With it.
they often do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So but like I said, I love tart. So there you go.
Right.
Okay. So you can go ahead and you want to explain these and then
Right, we'll go through it.
and
So-
throw it in the chat.
Absolutely. We'll just run it from the top down, I guess. So with the caveat that I think it's kind of an odd thing where we go 50 through 100 instead of 1 to 10 or whatever, but it is what, not all, but most of the wine rating systems have
Well,
placed.
I will actually give you a caveat on that because if I'm looking at a grading system, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm 0 to 50 is failing, but here really 0 to 74 is failing. So that is a very small window of 75 to 100 that is your passing scores, let's say.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's very,
Though I would say most people with the reality of it is
Mhm.
if it's not an 85,
then it's failing.
people are like, pretty much it's failing.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
That is the reality of what people do, even though it
Well,
shouldn't be, according to this.
if
There's
you're-
nothing wrong with a good solid wine, right?
Depending on why you're drinking the wine, yes.
Right.
Okay. Do you
Yep.
want to keep drinking or
Yeah.
you want to
So I
explain?
just want a little more. What can I say? All right. So 95 to 100, a classic, a great wine.
Uh-huh.
Something that you're like, this blew me away, right?
Mhm.
90 to 94, outstanding wine of superior character and style. I honestly feel like we throw 90s out too often.
Mhm.
Not everything should be outstanding, right?
Yeah.
Just because you liked it. If you liked it, it should probably be in the 80s. If you loved it, it should be in the 90s, right? So outstanding, a wine of superior character and style. But if you thought a wine was very good, that is not a wine that in any way was a disappointment. It's very good.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a wine with special qualities, interesting character. It intrigued me. I enjoyed my experience, right? You're in your 80s.
Mhm.
All right. And then a good solid wine, you're like, hey, I'm not upset that I drank this guy. 80 to 84, fine, no problem. Mediocre, like,
You're upset
I'm not
you
as
drank
thrilled.
that guy.
yeah. If you're in your 70s, let's just call it, you're not, you wish you'd had something better.
Right.
Right. So anyway, so there we go.
Okay. So let's see. We have 88 sour for the Tuckers.
Yep.
80 on its own, 84 to 85 with food, 2 tart for them.
Yeah. I get
Linda, 88 for them. For I think it's just Linda. And then we have Julie, 88.5, very good, definitely special qualities. We liked it a lot. More as it opened up. We actually aerated it into a decanter to help the process. Brian agreed he liked it more as it opened up.
Mhm.
85. Cheryl doesn't like the bitter taste. So 92 from Jerry, even better as it opened up.
Yeah. Definitely has to open.
Snyder's, I'm wondering if it is a specific style to local wine tastes. Like what would Aussies eat with this? So
Yeah.
kangaroo.
Like kangaroo. Yeah. Right.
Mhm. And Brian and Julie, we were saying it's not something we necessarily just buy to drink at home, but if we were going to a gathering where people want to try something out of their norm, this would be our
Right.
choice.
And
Yeah.
that's my thing. It's Brash Higgins. It's kind of, to me, the name says it, what they're going
Mhm.
for. They're swinging for the fences on all
Right,
of them. They're
right.
going with very intriguing styles.
Mhm.
And that was kind of part of the reason why I wanted to jump on this while I had the ability to go into a deeper discount on it,
Sure.
so to speak.
So that people could try it. And even
because
if it
it's-
wasn't their favorite.
because it's
It
going to be
wasn't horrible.
polarizing, because there are people that jump all over this
Mhm.
and it sells out immediately,
Yeah.
right? But it's got to be your thing.
Right.
And so I'd rather have people not feel overly invested, like this better show up at this
Right,
price
right,
point.
right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying?
Right.
When it's going to be something that is potentially polarizing.
Yeah. And then we have 187. The tartness was a lot for that.
It's a lot of tartness.
Yeah,
I get it.
is.
I do.
So, I mean, for me, I would do 92. I love the tart. So,
Oh, good. Very good.
Although
You're
I-
one of those people. That's the one for you.
I
right?
will say, for me, I would have enjoyed more tannins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I get that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, I want it with food.
Okay.
You know, like you say, I would be like without food, I'm in the 88 range.
Okay.
With food, as I have it in there and it plays,
Yeah,
then, you know,
you
I
had the sharp cheese
right.
too.
So I have that, or, you know, with some meat, which I'm about to have in a few minutes. It's going to be more like a 90, 91. You
I
know,
could
that
see
kind of
me
90,
liking
you
this
know.
more than you.
Right. So I'm down in that same thing where I'm like, hey, look, if I'm not having this play with food, it's very tart.
Yeah.
And I'm getting the other qualities that we're talking about here. There is complexity. It
Right.
is well made. It does make a statement, and it really does give you an idea of amphora aging in there with that minerality kicking up all that
Right.
acid and those other qualities. So it's fun. I wouldn't say it's a playful wine quite, but it is very character driven
Sure.
and very fun to drink.
Well, it's got those, like, it's got something that makes us talk about it
Right.
because it has that complexity.
Mhm.
If I had blind tasted it, I don't think I would have put it as a Shiraz. I don't know what I would have put it as, but I think it's much more tart than what I'm normally used to with the Shiraz.
I would have gone Italian because of the
Okay,
tartness,
all right.
right? Because
Mhm.
the Italians leave a ton, not always, but many parts of Italy leave a lot of acidity in their wines
Okay.
in order to pair it with food.
Right. okay,
And because he was specifically inspired by Sicily,
that makes
I
sense.
totally get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're blind tasting it, you're saying this is an Italian wine.
Yeah, if I was blind tasting it, I would go Italian, and I would go specifically Sicilian.
Okay.
And that was his inspiration. So
So
I
it-
get what he was doing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he accomplished what he was
Right.
trying to
So I
do.
hope that everyone at least had fun. And that's my thing, is like, not every wine has to blow you away. That's my new favorite every week. It's like, that was really cool. I learned some stuff and I enjoyed myself,
Yeah.
you know? So to me, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we can't always have California cabs every week.
Right. That's the
Even
thing. You
though
can't.
we might want to have California cabs every week. But
That's right.
Is the voice better now? Does it sound better?
Julie, everyone else can hear you. We can't. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah, she said, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
We are having a major audio issue. I don't know why. We hear the first
Major
part
audio issue.
and then it cuts out. Okay,
There it is.
let's see. We just opened a bitter dark chocolate with it and it's so good. with it.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
That
okay,
bitter
there you
dark.
go.
Yeah. I can see that.
Mm-hmm,
Was it'll play with it and lift it up.
mm-hmm,
Very nice.
yeah.
All right. So
Sources?
sources. So Wine Folly, always. Thank you so much, Wine Folly. You guys are amazing. Saturday Night Live, you know, thanks.
Yep.
For the 750.com, Wikipedia, Brash Higgins, of course, vineyards.com, Labels Wines, Once Upon a Wine Twitter account. There was some, one of the
I see the one that you love.
Wine Australia, and then winewankers.com.
Yep. There you go.
I am going to be
Just-
going by their website. I am so excited about learning more about Wine Wankers.
So that you can just put it in the sources and say it.
Oh,
every
I'm
week.
going to try and find a reason to include something from winewankers.com every week.
Of course you are. Okay.
Like, you know what? Slow clap for that name.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. Okay.
So next week.
Next week, we are going to do, because we do our cycles of reds. This will be our last one before we go on to a white again the week after. Don't
Okay.
worry. One more week
One
of
more week.
red. We have, but a new region.
Okay.
Let's go. We're going to the Willamette Valley for Pinot Noir, because we went there for a white Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I feel like yeah.
And we've done Pinot from New Zealand, and we've
Mhm.
done Pinot from California, but we need to get to Willamette. It is one of the most important regions in the United States for Pinot Noir production. It is a great combination of Old World, New World. And
I
so
think
here we have.
it's been a while since we've been
And
to
it's
the
been a-
Willamette Valley.
It has been,
Mhm.
and it's been a while since we've done a Pinot.
Mhm.
So next week, here we go. Ratings: James Suckling 91, Wine Enthusiast 90. Elk Cove makes beautiful wines, and they have some higher levels too.
I don't think we've done Elk Cove in the.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
So food pairings: salmon Rockefeller, bacon and cheese stuffed portobello mushrooms, roast zucchini and squash with blue cheese. Why not, right?
If you like blue cheese, yeah.
And then, as I always say with Pinot, duck, and more duck.
Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you very
yeah.
much.
Well, you would always choose duck. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. Duck.
Well, because it was the ducks or the geese that used to terrorize you when you
The
were 4
geese.
years old. Okay.
Geese used to terrorize me. I bet
Yeah.
it would be good with goose too.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys will come back. We're running over to the Willamette for some beautiful Pinot.
We promise to have our audio issues taken care of.
That's
by
right.
next week.
It'll all be good.
Mhm.
So, all right. So in the meantime, let's have a toast to the Brash Higgins Winery. They
Yep.
do not go by half measures. They really jump out there.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.